Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And this one, I was so excited to get this material that you sent my way
Oh, yeah.
from Dr. K at New Life Ministries. This teaching called What Are We Waiting For?
Mhm.
It's really grabbing people's attention, I think, because she's going right for these big questions about spiritual maturity and how we even experience reality itself.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
she kind of throws out a curveball right at the beginning, like, what if we've totally misunderstood this whole concept of waiting?
It's such a hook. It
Yeah.
really is.
Is.
Because we're so used to thinking about waiting as this passive thing.
Right. Like we're just
There.
twiddling our thumbs. Yeah.
Totally. But then she points out that the word itself can mean to serve or to receive from source.
Right.
So suddenly waiting becomes this active engagement.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like instead of waiting for something, we're
Huh.
waiting on something. Like almost like a waiter waiting on a table.
That's a really good analogy.
You know,
I like that.
and it makes it so much more active.
Yes. And that is actually a perfect analogy for what she calls the first fruits.
Okay.
Those who have kind of reached that level of maturity
Well,
where they recognize their role.
let's define first fruits here for our listener.
Sure.
Because it sounds like we're talking about people who've kind of moved beyond just like an intellectual understanding
Yeah.
of spiritual concepts, but are actually putting these principles into action.
Into practice. Yeah.
They're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she contrasts them with the groaning creation, which is really that yearning for understanding.
Right.
And she suggests that the first fruits have a responsibility
Mm.
to help alleviate that groaning
By sharing.
by sharing their insights and by living it.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting because she takes this waiting on concept even further.
Yes.
And she starts to link it to this idea of spiritual birth.
right.
And she describes this three-stage process that mirrors the trimesters of pregnancy.
She does.
So I'm already fascinated.
And it's not just a cool analogy.
Right.
It points to this really different way of looking at how we evolve.
Okay.
Because we tend to think of spiritual awakening as this big event,
Right, like a sudden thing.
this huge sudden thing.
Right.
But she's saying it's this gradual unfolding, this process.
So let's break down these stages
Let's do it.
for our listener here. So first up, we have conception.
Okay.
I'm already intrigued.
Well, just like in the physical.
Yeah.
This stage is about a seed of truth taking root within us,
Okay.
that aha moment
Mm.
when something just clicks.
Yeah.
And it's not just intellectual understanding, it's this knowing.
Yeah, it's like seeing the world in this whole new light.
Exactly. And it can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Think about when a scientific theory finally makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly the world is full of examples
Total.
that you never saw before.
It's like it was hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that, but on an even deeper level.
So after conception,
Mhm.
does this seed of spiritual truth just kind of sit there? Or does it start to actually grow and develop?
Well, that's where gestation comes in.
Okay.
And just like in physical pregnancy, this is a period of massive growth and expansion.
Okay.
We begin to integrate this new understanding into our lives.
So I'm picturing a tiny little seed sprouting roots and then pushing up through the soil and then blossoming into this beautiful flower or something.
It's a good image.
So how does this gestation actually play out in somebody's life?
In so many ways.
Okay.
You might start questioning old beliefs that no longer fit,
Okay.
or seeking out new sources of nourishment,
Right.
or even experiencing those synchronicities.
Like the universe is supporting this,
Yeah.
this growth.
Yeah. And she points out that this stage can also be a time of discomfort,
Ooh.
like morning sickness almost.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes spiritual growth feels like you're being stretched and pulled in all different directions.
Yes.
It's kind of exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. It's like our understanding is pushing against the boundaries of our old self, making room for the new.
Okay, so we've got conception. We've got gestation.
Uh,
What is the final stage of this spiritual birth process?
it's got to be birthing.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah.
So this represents like the culmination of the spiritual journey.
Yes,
This is where that inner knowing becomes our lived reality.
it does.
So it's like the baby is finally born,
Yes.
but in this case, the baby is our fully realized spiritual understanding.
Yes.
I love how she says the baby doesn't become a baby at the moment of birth.
Right.
It's been a baby from the moment of conception.
Right.
Which is such a powerful metaphor for understanding our own nature.
It is. It's a good one.
Yeah.
She's reminding us we already are everything.
We already are.
We were meant to be.
This is blowing my mind.
I mean,
I'm already seeing how this perspective could totally shift the way we view our own growth. You know? It's not about becoming something we're not. It's about realizing the truth of who we already are.
yes. And she says that's not just an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's about experiencing this truth on a subjective level.
Okay, now what does she mean by subjective reality?
That's a great question.
Because it sounds like she's suggesting that reality itself is somehow shaped by our perception.
Well, and that's something we'll get into
Okay.
in the next part of our deep dive.
All right.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. You know, before we jump into this whole subjective reality thing, I have to ask, you're really relating to those growing pains that Dr. K talked about
I was.
in that second trimester, the gestation stage.
Oh, totally. It
Yeah.
made me think about, like, when I first started exploring spirituality, I was so quick to judge people who didn't share my newfound beliefs.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
kind of embarrassing to admit now.
Yeah.
But I was like, if they only knew what I know.
Sure.
You know, it's like I had all the answers.
Oh.
But Dr. K's analogy really helped me to see that it was just part of that early stage of development.
Like you were still experiencing a bit of that spiritual morning sickness,
Yes.
trying to figure out what nourished you and what didn't.
Totally. And it also made me realize that judging others is often a sign of insecurity.
Oh, yeah.
Like we're trying to validate our own beliefs by
Right.
putting other people down.
That's a great point. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the deeper transformation that happens during that gestation stage.
Mm-hmm.
As we integrate these truths, we naturally become more compassionate and understanding.
Okay. So how does Dr. K connect this idea of subjective reality to these 3 stages of spiritual birth?
Well,
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what she means by that.
well, think about it this way. In each stage, our perception of reality is shifting
Okay.
as our understanding deepens. So
Okay.
during conception, that aha moment is cracking open our old worldview
Right.
just a little bit.
It's letting a little light in.
Yeah, letting in a glimpse of a new way of seeing things. And then during gestation, as that seed takes root and grows, we start to experience the world through a new lens.
Right. It's like the old filters are falling away.
Exactly.
And we're seeing things with more clarity and depth.
Yes. And this is where things get really interesting when we move into the birthing stage,
Okay.
because she suggests that this is where our subjective experience becomes even more powerful.
Okay.
Almost like we're co-creating reality itself.
Whoa, hold on. Are we talking about manifestation here?
Huh?
Like I'm suddenly going to be able to bend spoons with my mind because I've reached the birthing stage of spiritual development.
Huh. Not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember, Dr. K makes a clear distinction between manifestation and realization.
Right.
And she cautions us against getting caught up in trying to manipulate external circumstances.
She's saying it's more about aligning ourselves with the truth of who we are.
Yes.
And then allowing that to naturally flow outward into our experiences.
Exactly. It's less about making things happen.
Right.
And more about recognizing that we already possess everything we need within us.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it also seems kind of paradoxical, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if we already have everything we need within us, why do we still experience so much suffering and struggle in the world?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people ask that. And it's one that Dr. K addresses head on.
Okay.
She suggests that the groaning that we see in the world is actually a reflection of our collective forgetfulness.
So we've forgotten who we truly are.
Exactly. We've forgotten that we're these divine beings
Okay.
connected to this incredible source of love and power.
So we're operating from this limited, distorted view of reality.
Yeah, we're so caught up in the illusion of separation
And that's what creates the suffering.
that we create all this suffering
Oh.
for ourselves and each other.
We think that we need to fight and compete for resources.
Yeah, we've bought into the idea that we're lacking something.
And that happiness is out there somewhere.
Yes. But what if we've had the key to true fulfillment all along?
It's the keys in our pocket analogy again.
I know. It's so true.
We're looking for something we already possess.
We are.
So Dr. K is really challenging us to wake up from this collective amnesia
Mm-hmm.
and remember our true nature.
Yes. And that's where those first fruits come in again.
Right.
Remember, they're the ones who found their keys,
Mm.
and they're pointing us in the right direction.
It's not about preaching or converting anyone.
No, it's not about that.
It's about embodying that knowing
Mm-hmm.
and letting it naturally influence the world around us.
Exactly. She actually used a really cool analogy here.
Okay.
She talks about how a single tuning fork can cause another one to vibrate at the same frequency,
Okay.
simply by being in close proximity.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So the first fruits are like those tuning forks.
Yes.
They're vibrating at a higher frequency,
They are.
and they help to raise the vibration of those around them.
Simply by being who they are.
It's kind of like a subtle but powerful form of influence.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And it makes me think about her point about epigenetics,
Yes.
how our thoughts and beliefs can actually alter our DNA.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is.
What I find so fascinating about epigenetics is that it really highlights how interconnected we truly are.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
our individual choices and actions can have this ripple effect
Right.
that extends far beyond ourselves.
It's like we're all part of this intricate web of life.
Yes, we are.
And each of us has a role to play in weaving this beautiful and harmonious tapestry.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of conscious choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not just victims of our genes or our circumstances.
We have the power to choose.
We do. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions.
And those choices shape not only our own reality,
But the collective reality.
the collective reality we all share.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly empowering.
It is. And I think this is where Dr. K's teachings offer such a profound message of hope.
They do.
You know, we don't have to wait for some external savior or some
Yeah.
grand political revolution to change the world.
It's not about that.
The power to create a better world lies within each of us.
It does.
It all starts with that inner transformation, that knowing that you know that she talks about,
Right?
and then aligning our lives with that truth,
Yes.
expressing it in our words and actions.
Living it. Yeah.
Yeah, and allowing it to naturally radiate outward.
And remembering that even small acts of kindness and compassion and courage
Mm-hmm.
can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond what we can even imagine.
Like those random acts of kindness
Oh, yeah.
that were going viral a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People paying for the coffee of the person behind them in line,
Right.
leaving encouraging notes for strangers.
Yes.
It just created this wave of positivity
It did.
that spread across the globe.
Yeah. And imagine the transformative power if we all committed to living from that place
Every single day.
every single day.
It's mind-boggling.
It is.
We could literally change the world.
One thought, one word, one action at a time.
Dr. K's really challenging us to step into our power
She is.
as these conscious creators and
Yeah.
co-creators of reality.
That's right.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but I still have this one burning question.
Okay, I'm ready.
If we're already redeemed,
Mm-hmm.
if Earth is heaven,
Mm-hmm.
if we have everything we need within us,
Yeah.
then why are we still experiencing so much suffering and chaos in the world?
Right?
Where does all this darkness come from?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're going to explore further
Okay.
in the final part of our deep dive.
All right.
So stay tuned.
Okay. We're back. And I am ready to tackle this question that we left hanging. You know, if we're already redeemed, if Earth is heaven, if we have all this potential within us, why is there so much darkness and suffering in the world? It just feels like a disconnect.
Yeah. It's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And you know what? Dr. K doesn't shy away from it at all. She suggests that this darkness that we see, it's not some outside force. It's a direct result of our collective forgetfulness.
Okay.
We've forgotten who we truly are.
So we're operating from this limited, distorted view of reality.
Yes, we're so caught up in this illusion of separation
And that's what creates the suffering.
that we create all this suffering
Yeah.
for ourselves and each other.
It's like we think we need to fight and compete for resources.
Right. We've bought into this idea that we're lacking something.
That happiness is out there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. But what if we've had the key the whole time?
It's the keys in our pocket analogy again.
It is.
We're searching for something we already possess.
We are.
So Dr. K is really challenging us to wake up from this collective amnesia
Mm-hmm.
and remember our true nature,
Yes. And here's where those first fruits come in again.
right?
Remember, they're the ones who found their keys, and they're trying to point us in the right direction.
It's not about preaching or converting.
No, not at all.
No. It's about embodying that knowing
Mm-hmm.
and allowing it to influence the world around us.
Yeah. She uses this really interesting analogy.
Okay.
She talks about how a single tuning fork can cause another tuning fork to vibrate at the same frequency just by being near it.
Oh, I like that. So the first fruits are like these tuning forks,
Yes.
and they're vibrating at this higher frequency,
Yes.
and they're helping to raise the vibration of those around them.
Simply by being who they are.
Wow. It's such a subtle but powerful form of influence.
It really is. And, it speaks to the importance of personal transformation as a catalyst for collective change.
It really does. And it makes me think about what you said about epigenetics.
Yes.
How our thoughts and beliefs can actually change our DNA.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
If we can change ourselves at such a fundamental level, imagine the ripple effect we could have on the world.
It is mind-blowing. And it really shows how interconnected we are.
Right.
Like, our choices don't just impact us.
Right.
They impact everyone around us.
Yeah.
And even future generations.
It's like we're all part of this big web of life.
Exactly.
And each of us plays a part in creating this tapestry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it speaks to the power of making conscious choices.
Right.
We're not just victims of circumstance.
We have the power to choose.
We do. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions.
And those choices shape our reality.
And the reality of everyone around us.
Yeah. I think this is where Dr. K's teachings offer a really powerful message of hope.
They do.
We don't have to wait for some external savior
Right.
or some big political movement to change things.
We have the power within us.
The power is within each of us to create a better world.
It all starts with that inner transformation.
That knowing that you know that you know.
Right.
Aligning our lives with that truth.
Living it.
Expressing it.
Yes.
And allowing it to just radiate outward.
Yeah. And remembering that even the smallest acts of kindness and compassion and courage can have a ripple effect that we can't even begin to imagine.
So true. This has been such an amazing deep dive.
It has.
Dr. K's teachings are so profound.
You are.
I feel like I have this whole new perspective on spiritual maturity and the power of subjective reality.
I'm so glad. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to explore these ideas even further and see how they can apply them to their own lives.
And remember, there's no right or wrong way to approach this journey.
That's right. It's a deeply personal exploration.
We each have our own path.
We do. So trust your intuition, follow your heart, and allow yourself to be guided by that inner wisdom.
Beautifully said. As Dr. K would say, let your light shine. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep shining.